Hello, everybody, and thank you for joining me today. It's Allan Laboucan with the Rocks and Stocks News Show, and we've got one of the sponsors, Arizona Silver Exploration, is on today. And this morning they had some excellent results, including, let me get it here, the highlight hole was 51 grams of gold and 16 grams of silver. Starting very close to surface at 54.88 meters to 56.40. Also include another hole had 18.2 grams and 46 of gold and 46 grams of silver, from 13.72 to 15.24. Great looking stuff there, Greg. Congratulations, amigo.
Yeah, thanks. We're very pleased.
So this is an epithermal gold and silver system that you guys are on in Arizona. Tell us a little bit about what gets you guys excited about these results.
Well, I can go back to the early 1980s when I first visited the property when I was with Miranda. And at that time, it was a very exciting looking property, but a state highway went right down the middle of the property, and it made it very difficult to see how you could explore and develop it. So I just put it on the shelf. And when we were looking for opportunities in Arizona Silver, I thought of that property, went back to take a look at it, and realized they had realigned the highway around the property and decommissioned the highway through the property. And it's now the private driveway of the owner of the property. So we jumped on the opportunity to cut a deal with the owner. And that was we staked the claims around the patented ground first, and then we cut a deal with the owner in 2020. So we've only been on the property for about 2.5 years, drilling off the strike extension, both on the patented ground and immediately off of it. We haven't found the limits of it yet. So we're pretty excited, and we're drilling patches along the vein, so a vein system. So there are patches in between that haven't been drilled yet. And these drill results we just reported this morning occupy two of the undrilled patches that we just finally got around to drilling. So we're pretty excited because the anticipation was, well, maybe there's nothing in these empty patches, but indeed there's a lot of excitement in the empty patches, and we have several more empty patches to drill.
And is that along one primary vein, or do you have multiple veins there, Greg?
Well, historically, it's been described as one primary vein, but that's not the case. There are two very well-defined veins. We have posted sections to the website, or if we haven't posted them yet, we will post them, which show what we call the HW or hanging wall vein and the FW or footwall vein, which define the boundaries of a stockwork zone contained between them. And you mentioned the two high-grade intercepts that we reported, but in between them is a fair bit of stockwork that all totaled comprise a zone, a thickness of 40 to 65 meters that carries 1 to 2 grams plus of gold. So in the near surface environment, which is what we've been drilling, as you reported, they're very shallow intercepts. This has very good open pittable potential. I mean, very low strip ratio to go after this. If you look at the sections, you'll be able to see that. Yet the veins continue at depth. So there's a combination open pit underground scenario here that we find pretty attractive.
Now, I had an interview with Yale Simpson not too long ago, and there's a alteration area not too far away as well, right? That's quite big, if I remember the.
It's immediately adjacent to the southern end of the patented claims. It's we call it the Red Hills. It's red because it was loaded with pyrite, which is now oxidized to hematite. And we were presented an opportunity to run a CSAMT line across it. We did, and we got a remarkably strong low resistivity response in that. And we are currently drilling that target. So I mean, if that bears fruit, and we like the way the geology matches up with the CSAMT anomaly, it really shows that it's reading the geology. It's not just a bunch of numbers that make no sense. So we're pretty excited that we get down into the CSAMT anomaly. We might see a much larger system than just the structure that we've been drilling to date.
And so far, you're high up in an epithermal vein system. You haven't even really got after the depth potential yet, and meanwhile, you're hitting some very attractive grades.
Yeah, we're getting excitement. The vein's been faulted a little bit, and we're still trying to wrestle with how we put that back together again. But where we see the upper portions of the vein, both in drill holes and near surface, it has very little surface expression, or if it does have a surface expression, it's mostly calcite. Sometimes it's just black calcite, coarse black calcite. Sometimes it's banded calcite. But that classically is well above the boiling zone. All the CO2 has been driven off of the system and is reprecipitating in calcite in upper bicarbonate waters. What we're finding with our drilling as we systematically go down the dip in the structure is the calcite changes character. First of all, it becomes bladed, which is an indication that you're just above the boiling zone. Then the bladed calcite becomes replaced by quartz, which tells you you are in the upper part of the boiling zone, and the calcite changes character to non-bladed and manganiferous rhodochrosite sort of calcite, which is typical of some high-grade epithermal systems. Fruta del Norte, for instance, has good rhodochrosite in the ore zone. And then our hope, our anticipation, actually, is that as we go deeper in the system, we'll lose the calcite altogether and get purely into the quartz precipitation where most of the precious metals should be.
And that's pretty exciting because, you know, these, you're just starting to touch the quartz part of the vein. And yet you're still well above that boiling zone and getting some really attractive stuff.
Well, and an interesting observation by Dr. Stuart Simmons, who came out to look at the vein, and he's a world-renowned expert in epithermal systems and geothermal systems. And he looked at we get particulate gold in the upper levels of the vein in the quartz, particularly in the quartz that's replacing bladed calcite. And he says, this looks like transported gold, little sols, rounded balls of gold that have been transported into the upper levels of the epithermal system. So his expectation is that we get down into the heart of the system, we'll see where it's actually being precipitated in place as opposed to being transported out of the system.
So for the non-geologist out there, these epithermal vein systems, they can have zonation of grade along strike and at depth. But what you're really focusing and looking for is the boiling zone. And that can be 300 meters of depth. And sometimes you can have a double boiling zone. But when you get those grades above the boiling zone, it's pretty exciting potential of what happens when you get closer to the heat engine of what caused the mineralization above it. So you guys are onto something real special here, Greg.
Well,
did I get the geology right?
You know, the Oatman district, which was in operation from the late 1800s to the 1930s or so, is a great example of exactly what we're chasing. Surface expression of that vein was negligible, but down about 100 meters, they banged into a 20 to 30 foot wide vein that ran on average an ounce of gold per ton, 32, wow. 33 grams. So you have to have, you know, a fairly intimate understanding of the mineral system to have the conviction to go after a target that doesn't have much of a surface expression. And Oatman is a great example of why you would do that.
Well, that's the case in a lot of epithermal vein systems. I live in Zacatecas, Mexico, and there's a lot of big epithermal systems around here, including Juanicipio, and you go up into the north of Sonora and places like that. And Ermitaño, you know, had one outcrop with moderate grade to just anomalous. And First Majestic drilled about 150 meters below that and hit a ½ ounce per ton of gold, and the rest is history. Now it's a mine. Yeah. So yeah, understanding that near surface stuff is really important.
It is. Midas is a great example of it. And Midas was known for a long time as a low-grade system at the surface. Stockwork, disseminated. There was I believe one little high-grade vein. It was inches, maybe 6, 8 inches wide, and it ran 3, 4, 5, maybe 6 grams. It wasn't something that would get you really juiced up and excited. But 2,000-3,000 feet, 100,000 meters below the surface, there's a remarkably high grade system there. And that's what you have to be thinking of when you see these things, is what's down at depth, and have to be able to chase it at depth, which can be a challenge because deep holes are expensive, but we'll get there. We're getting there. In fact, this hole that we're drilling currently will go down dip on the vein deeper than any hole we've drilled so far. So our expectation is that we'll see more of that quartz gold association below the calcite zone that I referred to earlier.
And you must be like I've seen some of the core, and on those deeper holes, you're starting to get into the quartz, so it's really pointing you in the right direction.
It is, the geochemistry of these low sulfidation epithermal systems is pretty weak. I mean, it's gold, silver, quartz. There's very little in the way of trace metals that can guide you to telling you whether you're getting closer or further away from the system. But we do keep track of the gold-silver ratio, and we believe, or maybe reverse it and say the silver-gold ratio. The silver-gold ratio is low towards the heart of the system, and it increases the further away you get from the heart of the system. At least that's our interpretation of this system. So we have some encouragement. We're getting closer by the low silver-gold ratio that we're experiencing.
But that near surface stuff is teaching you a lot about where to go deeper, because you're talking about stockworks and brecciation, and something's breaking up that rock as you're close to surface, and then you're seeing the transition of the calcite and moving into quartz.
This was a very dynamic system. There's a lot of brecciation, and it's not just fault brecciation, it's hydrodynamic brecciation, meaning the fluid was explosive. And that's what helps release the pressure in the boiling zone, is that explosive release of pressure that then causes the precipitation of the metals. So it's a very powerful system, or was a very powerful system, and it could have come from some depth. I mean, we've posted a presentation on our website that shows comparable vertical dimensions of epithermal veins from around the world. And some of them can go down more than the 300 meters that is typical of some of the circum-Pacific ones. I mean, the ones in Mexico go down 1,000 meters or more in places. So, if you have a robust system, which we think this is, the depth potential could be pretty darn exciting.
Well, and the strike extent at near surface tells you about the potential for the depth as well, right?
Yeah, it tells us a lot about the magnitude of the crack, the fault that this fluid came gushing up. I mean, ours is now pushing 4 kilometers long, and we have, in the southern part of the vein system, we have 10 to 20 foot wide vein exposures of banded calcite. With a little bit of quartz in it, but mostly banded calcite. You won't get much joy geochemically out of that, a few tens to maybe 100 ppb gold, but it tells us we're well above the boiling zone, and we need to, to focus on going down at depth to test the boiling zone and something like that.
And does it also give you an indication of the long-lived potential of the system?
Well, we see I'm going to say 4 or 5 periods of mineralization, different colorations and different textures of quartz and calcite. So that tells us more about the longevity of the hydrothermal system. It was repeatedly active. A single epithermal pulse tends to be weak, but when you have multiple episodes that keep rebrecciating and reintroducing silica and or gold, silver, that's when the system strengthens. Oatman had 5 pulses of gold mineralization. It was really, all of them had gold, but the last 2 were really the strongest. And the unique to this system is we've seen no sulfides whatsoever. So there again, no lead, zinc, silver, or lead, zinc, arsenic, antimony, mercury that we can use as a guide. This is a very clean system. And
that's sort of what you're looking for in these kind of systems, right, Greg?
Well, it pleases the metallurgists. They like allow those nasty elements with the concentrate or in their solution.
Now, something else I've learned being down here in Zacatecas, Mexico, is that when you find one, you can also find blind veins. One of the classic stories down here, not far from where I live, is the Milagros mine, and they had two parallel veins and they cut a tunnel through to connect the two, and they found another vein that way, and it was phenomenally high grade. I think the calculations would be worth something like $300,000 a ton kind of rock,
Wow,
just full of
pure
silver.
metal.
You know, so the potential is there not only on what you know, but finding blind stuff as well. For example, Juanicipio
Yes,
and Valdecanis at the Mag Silvers deposit are both blind veins.
they were blind, but they were conceptualized. Peter McGod went after that. He anticipated, he conceptualized that there was a vein down there, and he went after it based on a weak surface expression that doesn't look a lot dissimilar from some of the stuff we have. So
I think his theory was partially on the idea that Saucito, that network of veins that was at Saucito, would extend onto their ground.
that's part of it. Yes.
Yeah, yeah. So are you're using angled holes to drill this?
Yes. Primarily.
But when you drill those angled holes close to surface, it's a little difficult to potentially find some blind veins. But as you go deeper, you'll be covering more ground,
Right.
and quite possibly could find some blind veins there.
Well, we're in the process of permitting via a plan of operations 40 holes on BLM land that will allow us to step back and drill shallow to steep angle holes into the system from a further enough distance that we can get good intercepts on the deep parts of the vein. And that's moving along very well. We've got the draft environmental assessment written, and we've already had several meetings with the BLM. We're hoping we get approval of that by the fall. We can drill some deeper holes into the vein system this fall.
And I would imagine if you drill through what you're projecting and you keep in alteration, you'll keep going and maybe find something else.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
We're drilling. We'll have a second hole this go around that goes into the CSAMT anomaly, and we don't expect it to hit the same geology that we're drilling along the mineralized structure we've been chasing for the last 3 years. So it's really almost a wildcat hole for us geologically, because we don't know what the geology is going to be, but we've got a red hot CSAMT anomaly we want to test, and we have some ideas what's down there, but until we see the core come out of the ground, we won't really know. But we've just been discussing it yesterday, in fact, and that is, we're not stopping that hole till we see fresh rock.
There you go. I like the sounds of that. That's often how these blind veins are found, by just keeping going if you're in the alteration.
That's correct. I mean, we think we understand these systems, but in reality, there's always surprises there for you.
That's why you put the old truth machine down there, right, Greg?
That's why we drill. That's right.
Well, I had the interview I did with Yale, he had some very positive things to say about your skills at these kind of systems, Greg, and it sounds like the company is in very good hands on the technical front.
Well, we're being a little like a bulldog. We've sunk our teeth into this one, and we're not letting go. We think we're onto something really good, and we're on hole 111. It's not like we just started this yesterday, but with every hole we learn more, and so far with every hole we've expanded the resource potential. I mean, we haven't done a resource yet, and we probably won't until we've drilled enough holes to really desire to do a resource. But it's looking good. Every hole seems to expand the system and improve our understanding of it.
So far, most of those 110 holes are pretty shallow. You're really mostly above.
They're all shallow. They're all shallow. They're our deepest hole up until this hole that we're drilling currently was 827 feet. We lost the hole, unfortunately, in 2-gram material, which is unfortunate, but the driller stuck the rods in the hole and we couldn't extricate them. So we're stepping out a little bit and re-drilling along the side of that 30 meters away or something like that to get down below 1,000 feet and see if we can hit the mineralization at depth.
Well,
so
these
relatively shallow. I mean, if this system goes 2,000-3,000 feet, there's a lot of deep drilling that has to be done here.
Well, and the fact that you got about 4,000 feet of strike extent is pretty good indication of the depth potential.
Yeah, it's not a short system. It's not a shallow system. It's a big system.
Big, powerful, long-lived system. That's exactly what you want in these epithermal vein systems.
That seems to be the case, yes.
Greg, I find you as a bit of a reserved guy there. I noticed in your quote you said good grades. I think a lot of people would be doing cartwheels when they see those kind of grades.
Well, yeah, I try to keep it modest.
Well, those are pretty handsome grades. When you get into that bonanza stuff and you're still high in the epithermal vein system. Looks like you got something real special here, Greg.
Well, we look forward to being able to announce more of those and maybe even better ones down the road. We'll see.
Okay, so just to sort of wrap things up, you've got more pending holes, or have you reported everything and starting new ones, or what's the case?
We reported the 12 reverse circulation holes that we drilled in March. So those results came back last week, primarily last week. So it's about 6 to 8 weeks to get results back from a laboratory these days. Last week, a week and a half ago, we started a 2-hole core program, which we announced to test the down dip projection of the vein next to the hole that we lost, and the CSA-AMT anomaly, which we discovered in February. So those 2 holes will take us through the end of this month, end of May, and then we'll wait 6 to 8 weeks for the results of those 2 holes.
And that core is going to give you a better understanding of the geology, the alteration.
Right. I mean, core obviously gives you much more information than reverse circulation cuttings. It doesn't give you RC doesn't give you the structure and the details that you get with core. So we'll take a little more time to study the core. And of course, it has to be sawed as opposed to just bagged and shipped off to the lab. So it takes more time to prepare the core, but it does provide a lot more information, and we'll glean as much out of it as we can.
And for the near surface stuff, the reverse circulation is fine, but as you go deeper, you certainly want more of that geological information.
Well, and reverse circulation has about a 700 to 1,000 foot limit in this terrain. It just, unless you bring in a lot of auxiliary air to clean the hole out and return the cuttings, it just doesn't have the muscle to drill much deeper than that. And the pipe is heavy, so you've got to have bigger drawworks in order to handle dual tube pipe as opposed to core pipe, which is relatively light compared to RC pipe. So yeah, you go much below 700 feet, it's best to switch to core and just keep going with core.
Well, and that can potentially save you money down the road, because you learn as you're going with the core what the geology, alteration, faulting all looks like. So that will help you target additional holes as you step out and if you want to go deeper.
Well, yeah, and to go deep, you have to use core, so there's really no alternative.
Great. Well, I'm certainly happy for you guys. I'd love to see that high grade stuff, Greg. And these epithermal vein systems are very important for precious metals production. I think it's the statistic is something like 25% of the gold and silver produced comes from epithermal veins, and looks like you guys are onto something real special there.
Yeah, we think so. We think we're on to what might become a real significant gold deposit.
Okay, well, did I forget to ask anything, Greg?
Not that I can think of, no.
All righty, let me wrap it up and we can have a little chat at the other end.
Okay, sounds good.
Thanks. All righty. Yeah, no problem, Greg. I'm always happy to talk to someone who finds some great stuff with the Truth Machine. There you go, folks. So Arizona Silver has what looks like a very special epithermal vein system. They've done a lot of work, as Greg was saying, and that work will help them to get deeper into the system. And as you get deeper into the system, they would probably start hitting more of the primary quartz vein, and think, just what they're releasing off of the higher in the system stuff is tremendously exciting. But the depth potential and if you find something serious in these kind of epithermal vein systems, they tend to be low cost production, high grade, high margins. So they're the kind of thing that investors in the exploration space want to be looking at. And I think Arizona Silver has one you want to take a close look at. Go to their website. You'll find a lot of great details. Check out their corporate presentation. Not long ago, we did an interview with Yale Simpson, who's a very talented guy. And there you go. Do your homework. This is for information purposes only. Speak to your financial advisors, but I can confidently say that I think these guys are onto something real special, and the Truth Machine seems to be cooperating. On that note, have a great day, and we'll talk to you soon.